Welcome, everyone, to the Enter the Vortex podcast with Carol and Erin, where we share our experiences and opinions on the metaphysical and physical aspects of life as we know it. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome back.
No kidding. It's been a minute, isn't it?
What is it, like 3 weeks since we recorded? So it'll be like 4 weeks since they've heard things?
Yeah. Sorry, y'all. We got caught up in the world.
Like an unintentional, I don't know, almost month-long break.
It almost feels like we got caught up in a vortex that, is kind of funny considering that's our podcast title. I really feel like I got caught up in a vortex of the collective energy and what's going on and all the chaos and crumbling of things that I'm like so excited for.
Things got spicy at the end of January.
They really did.
Trickled into February, and now I can't believe we're halfway through February, and it's just like
usually January drags for so long, but I blinked and it's February. It's the middle of February already.
I know. And I it was one of those weird things where I felt like I was in the weekend for the first 2 weeks of January into maybe the third week of January, and then things started to get spicy in Canada, and then I blinked and now we're middle of February and I have no idea where the time went. But it's definitely been interesting. I don't know, I'm sure you've kind of been feeling this shifting type of energy, the imploding of things and the rebuilding of things, and it's been very spicy and interesting.
It's like a hot and spicy soup. Canada's getting served hot and spicy soup right now because the Canada as we know it is crumbling, and I see that as such a fucking fantastic thing, because if you actually look at the roots of how Canada started, it didn't necessarily have the greatest of intentions anyway, and I really feel like what's happening before our eyes, it's been quite the roller coaster ride. Let me put it to you that way. For me, I got almost entranced with the media and what's been happening, and comparing and contrasting what you see in the mainstream media compared to what our politicians are saying, compared to what other just people on the ground that I know that have been involved in protests since the beginning of the pandemic, right here in Manitoba, and just the whole roller coaster ride that has become. And then the more and more people that start to awaken to all of the agendas that are actually out in the world that being at play right now. And it's it really feels like, holy shit, the fire hose was turned on and it's shooting icicles, because we are in Canada. It's minus 50,000 outside right now. And yet here we are sitting in our basement, so to speak, and the whole world around us is out there fighting for freedoms that should have never been taken away from us in the first place, realizing how many of our constitutional charter of rights are being stepped on and overrun right now. And yet it really makes me curious about the original intention of these charter rights, and if they are the ultimate, and if we are to follow the rule of law. It seems to me I want to investigate and get curious about everything it's crumbling, because it sounds to me like perhaps maybe Canadians wholeheartedly want to believe the best, I think, in others, and they want to have this really patriotic belief system about our foundations, but I don't think the foundations our country was built on was actually that strong to begin with. And I think that's why it's crumbling, and fuck yes, I'm here for it, because it wasn't working. It's not going to work. What got us here won't get us to where we need to go, where we want to go, to honor humanity and honor each other and have autonomy and freedom and true sovereignty as much as we can in earth, working in communion with earth and within our communities and our country and our people. So holy hack, has it been a ride. It absolutely has been a ride.
It has been a very interesting
My emotions have been all over the place the last 3 weeks.
I find it really interesting because when I sit back and I think about even just my journey through this entire pandemic, and for anyone who's not paying attention to what's going on in the world, Canada is having this massive, peaceful protest this freedom convoy where the truckers were, the lifeblood of our country, essentially, who, help with the supply lines of delivering food and products across Canada, have essentially been mandated to either get vaccinated or they can't go across the border to the US. I can't remember the exact stats, but there is a lot of the mainstream media would have you believe that there was such a small amount of truckers that were unvaccinated. I think they're saying like 90% are vaxxed.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
However, a lot of people have kind of just gotten to the point where enough is enough. We've done what we needed to do, and we're not allowing this to go any further. And when you're already disrupting I don't know how to say it, but when you're already disrupting a supply chain that has been disrupted for several years before the pandemic hit, with various reasons behind that, it is just, it's like mind-blowing that people would do this, right? And I know that the truckers, it's kind of like the same thing with the healthcare workers who, I don't know of many people out there who might know about this. If you pay attention in Canada, you might know. But a lot of healthcare workers were basically told, actually all healthcare workers, from my understanding across the board, were told you have to get vaccinated, or you have to do rapid testing if you're going to be unvaccinated. And if you don't agree with those options, then you're out. So you're already crippling a healthcare system that has been crippled, if you will, especially like if you look in the province of Manitoba with Pallister coming into power, before the pandemic. He nuked our healthcare system. He rearranged things. He cut beds. He switched things up. We lost a couple of urgent care centers. We've lost the quick care centers. Sorry, we lost the quick care centers. We switched some emergency rooms to being quick care centers. So it really destabilized our healthcare system as a whole. And then with this coming out, it was just like, oh man, like, are we really going to do that right now? So if we look at healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, other healthcare professionals, as well as the truckers who were once, before vaccinations came out, being, held up, being like the heroes of the pandemic. And now we've gotten to a point where you're vilified if you do not get vaccinated. Like, that's mind blowing to me. And it's really interesting because when I sit down and I think about where I was at the beginning of this pandemic and like how we kind of got into this, like I would never have thought that we would get to this point and that we would be the country that everyone is looking to have some sense of like return to freedom. Like that never crossed my mind.
That's actually funny that you say that, because all the rabbit holes I chose to go down at the beginning of the pandemic, I've definitely researched I've researched a lot of conspiracy theories, and I really love what Russell Brand said. He's like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm a conspiracy analyst. And I kind of thought to myself, like, fuck yes, that makes so much sense, because the term conspiracy theory, first of all, is a derogatory term, and it's used intentionally as a way to minimize what you are saying and make it so that as if you don't have any merit in what you're saying. Well, you know what? I think every human is valid in their opinion, whether you disagree with them or not, whether they're radical or not. You know what? I think the thoughts that we think are okay. We need less thought police in the world. We need more ability to have these conversations. Cue podcasts, cue YouTube videos. Like, yes, there's still censorship and cancel culture apparent in these spaces, but I'm also really jazzed to see so many different platforms and the CEOs of these platforms taking a stand and saying, actually, you know what? We do honor free speech. Your government may not honor free speech, but we're going to honor free speech. And to me, it makes me just like, looking back at where I was at in my mentality in 2020, at the beginning of 2020, even before we were shut down in our province, but like there was kind of those little rumblings in January and February of the virus and stuff, like coming out and being a potential threat, and then certain businesses and sports venues starting to make the decision to stop their season, and it was like, okay, wow, this might be a big deal. Like, what's going on here? And then thinking about all of the conspiracy information that was out there, most of which has come true. So any of y'all that labeled me a conspiracy theorist, maybe you owe me an apology. Maybe you owe somebody an apology. Just saying. Or at least laugh it off and realize like, oh shit, y'all got me. Like, you're right. Like, whoa, I wish I would have known this sooner. But some of those theories, I kind of assumed that it would be like America, that would be the freedom fighters, because that's kind of the premise of their, you know, their rights and their belief system and their patriotism is like. And I kind of feel like the whole Trump thing was a bit hijacked and distorted, and I don't think that we really have a full and true understanding of politics in the States, because I think the information that we got was kind of, you know, curated, if you will, a little bit to paint certain pictures and vilify, you know. And it's just, it blows my mind to see. It kind of bugs me a little bit, not gonna lie. But like when you can see something and then you can't unsee it, and then you get frustrated because other people can't see it that way because they're so stuck in their ways. It's like, I need to get better at figuring out how to have a conversation with those people, but then also, do they want to hear it? Probably not, you know. But to sit here 2 years later and realize, like, as if it's Canada, but of course it's Canada. Like, fuck yeah, it's Canada. Like, why wouldn't it be Canada? And what if, rather than looking at all of the negative connotations, because there is repercussions, like obviously there is risk involved with the protests that are happening. I don't for one second believe any of it is nefarious of intention at its core. There's probably going to be somewhere, like when you have millions of people involved, not everyone's a good person. Like, newsflash, we live on planet Earth. Not everyone's here to be nice. Like, right? Like, oh my gosh. But like, even if there was some of that as a quote unquote undercurrent, you can't tell me every single person that's become involved in this movement, of every single race, culture, creed, statures, age. Like, we have toddlers and we have elderly, we have veterans, we have the Sikh community, we have like other POCs that are like, they have their own freaking Instagram accounts to prove that, hey, this isn't actually a quote unquote supremacist movement like the media will have you believe. Pro tip: the media lies. If y'all didn't know that, the mainstream media lies. They're not legally required to be truthful. So how can you actually believe anything? As far as I'm concerned, it's Hollywood. They're all actors to me. And the amount of inflammatory things that are being said in the mainstream about an average family who just wants their freedom back, that never should have had their freedom taken away in the first place, who wants power over their choices for their children and for their elderly, and to just be able to be in communion, which is what the whole point of being on Earth is to be in communion with each other, regardless of where you're from and what you look like and what you do. Like, I feel like there's this interesting, I don't want to say parallel. It doesn't feel like it's parallel, but it's like these concurrent things happening where you see these little shreds of like things that make you feel gross and make you question, like, maybe there is something nefarious happening, but then at the same time you see so much more of the positive that could come of this, that we get caught up in. I mean, I've spun out on some of the negative stuff, but then every time I actually like pull my energy back and think about what's really going on, and I look at the big picture and I see all the things on Instagram from people who were on the ground in Ottawa, in Toronto, in Windsor, Ontario, in Vancouver, in Calgary, at the borders all across Canada, even like PEI and Fredericton are hopping on this train now. And like, we're getting support from the US side as well. I know North Dakota I saw a video from North Dakota at Emerson border, and they're on the other side of the border in support of us. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like, if we're rallying so hard to get our freedoms back and we're getting the support of our neighbors, that if like, how can certain other mainstream media even report anything else? Like, it just boggles my mind that people aren't starting, like, more people aren't starting to ask questions. More people are, but there are some that are just so stuck in that, wanting to keep their head in the sand. And it's like, do you actually feel safe where you are in that train of thought? Because if you're hanging on so tightly to this belief system and you are wanting to paint everyone as awful and shitty humans for participating, and how dare you have an opinion that differs from what the TV's told me, like, you can't feel safe in your body. There's got to be some physiological things that are happening in your body that are rooted in fear, that if you could just pause for a second and pull yourself out of your fear and your loss and realize that your stake in the sand also is that you at some level want freedom, but you're just seeing it from the other side. You're seeing it from freedom to you means following what the government wants. But when in history has the government actually shown us that they do have our best interest in heart, like as an individual compared to a giant collective? And like, I have a huge opinion on public health. Like, I don't think public health is my responsibility. I think it should be returned to the individual. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's just, it blows my mind that public health is also not even taking to any consideration the mental health, because you don't have health if you don't have mental health. Your body doesn't function properly. It's unable to do so, because if you're always in fight or flight, you create illness from that. And I feel like Canada needs just one big giant freaking human chain group hug, because like, when this is all said and done, there is a lot of fallout when people's realities are shattered because they have been lied to. We've been lied to for a long time. I've just been privy to it for a little bit longer because I've always been a question the narrative kind of person, even in school. You ask any of my junior high teachers, like, my goodness, I was such an asshole. Like, and I know this, but I would constantly question authority. Mm-hmm. Why should I listen to you? Why should I do this? Why should I give me the reasons why first? And then I decide for myself. I've always had that approach, but it makes me wonder why that industry has stayed so silent, because the premise of education is to teach critical thinking and body autonomy. And yet here we are causing trauma to our students because we're just doing what we're told.
Just, like how informed consent is one of the most important things in healthcare.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be, and the lack of coercion and do no harm and various other Hippocratic Oath stuff. One of the things that I find, just kind of backing up a little bit, one of the things that I find most interesting, you were talking about like when you were in early 2020 and you were thinking like, who would be the ones who would like kind of blow up this whole scene, right? And you were thinking that it was going to be the US based on, various things. It just pinged to me that, Canada is always seen as the ones fighting for other people's like peace and freedom, right? Like if you look at all of our wars, we have always been the freedom fighters.
Truth.
But it's always been for someone else.
Truth.
Right? Isn't it so interesting? I'm getting goosebumps.
Dude, I'm getting all my Akashics flashing at me too.
Yeah, it was just like, I have to say that. And I don't know, like, it's just so interesting to sit down and think like, finally, Canada is stepping up and fighting for their own freedoms. Because again, yeah, we've been a very compliant society. I feel like we're very much like, I mean, even if you listen to anyone else talk about Canada, they're like, oh, they're always the nice ones. They don't want to ruffle any with feathers. They're always so peaceful and they never say boo and whatever. And now like the way that the world is looking at us, it's just like, what is happening to Canada? And I think that's part of what's making people stand up and take a look, right? And like, if you dive down those rabbit holes and you actually look at some of the other things that are going on, like this trucker convoy, this freedom convoy that started in Canada here has spanned across the globe now. I was just watching videos of like, oh my God, I'm going to say like million or more people in Australia coming together.
Whoop, whoop. Aussies.
Like, good job, Australia. You guys, I think you had a rough go.
They really did hold the
military
line
there for a little bit.
Yeah, they were definitely holding the line as the most harshest, the most harshest country lockdowns. But I almost feel like, in contrast to Canada, like I hate to say this, but Canadians, you're so compliant. You've complied yourself into complacency, and you didn't see this coming. A lot of people did not see this coming.
Ooh.
And so there's this quote of like, truth passes through three gates. The first being ridicule, the second being violently opposed, and the third being wildly accepted as evident. Well, we're in stage 2 in Canada. And I can't believe I have to say that it's shitty to believe that we're in that stage where it's violently being opposed. But really, there's been violence amplified since the beginning of the pandemic with the rules and the mandates. Like, I had a principal or administrator, she was a principal of the school that I was teaching at, say to me something that I just kind of thought, well, isn't that fucking interesting? She said to me, rules were made to be broken. Okay, if that's true, how the fuck do you maintain any order or anything at all in your classroom? And then I've kind of thought, well, okay, let's flip that. Let's ditch the word rule, because rule itself, mandates, laws, those kinds of things, they are heavily loaded with a lot of anger, because it does mean that a freedom is taken away. And obviously for criminals, like, I don't support any criminals and anything like that, but I also don't support the government that's criminal. Like, let's look at the government and what they're doing that is criminal. Like, we need to have that brought to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone is above the law. And what if we flip the conversation from rules, mandates, and laws and corruption to boundaries and ethics and moral obligations and communion with the earth and communion with your neighbor? Mm-hmm. And communion with the animals and all of the elements. And, you know, it's interesting to see how Canadians can rally. And when you say, like, we've always spent our time fighting for the freedoms of others, we've almost kind of let our own freedoms fall to the wayside, because maybe we've just taken them for granted that they would never be exploited. And yet, when you actually look at the history, there was rumblings of these things being exploited when our current leader's father was in charge.
Didn't he put together the charter, or wasn't he in around the time?
There was something about his involvement in the charter where I do believe that he's passed legislation that caused a loophole, which is being exploited currently. And I find it curious. Like, I don't know how many human rights lawyers or constitutional lawyers that we have in employment in Canada, but there's probably not enough of them. But that being said, there's also, like, how am I going to say this? The world is watching Canada. Canada's not watching Canada. And that sucks to some level, because
so funny though.
It's funny, but it's like, we're so busy fighting for everybody else's freedoms that we forget our own, and we're so busy worrying about the rest of the world that we don't look at what's happening in our own backyard. And I think that's actually why we've allowed things to become exploited so easily, because we've gone on that honor system, because some of us in Canada still do operate on honor, believe it or not, more often actually than I think not. But there seems to be this sort of hijacking of the higher ups that's happening, that is why we're seeing things crumble. Because I know that it might seem really shitty right now, or really uneasy, like a lot of things are uncertain, up in the air, decisions still need to be made, votes still need to happen, yada yada. We're kind of seeing all of that really gross stuff that's been happening on the undercurrent being brought to the surface, and like, the world needs to see how bad it's been for everyone to understand why this is happening here in Canada. And I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I remember reading, I love astrology for this, I came across this really cool website that was all Canadian astrology, and this girl was, it's not the one that we follow, it's somebody else. It was like a random link I clicked. If I can figure it out, I'll link it in the show notes, and I'll send it to you as well, Erin. And I'll post it on our Instagram as well for any of the listeners that are interested. But she, I think it was a female, basically went and did the chart for Canada, the chart for the leaders, the chart for the premiers, and like the different constitutional stuff that happened. She kind of talked about that, and something that pinged me was that, like, if Canada is actually meant to be the place card holder for justice, if that was part of the intention of when we, became a country, isn't it ironic that it was built on so much injustice? And all of those injustices, all of those skeletons in the closet are about to be exposed, and people are fucking knocking these skull heads around, like metaphorically. And I'm here for it, man. Like a month ago, even a month ago, I didn't think the world was going to flip this way. Like I was still kind of holding out hope on America, or like, I don't even know, like maybe Australia would have taken the chains. But I think that, as much as Canadians are kind and loving and compassionate, we have a line in the sand. And a few of those lines in the sand have already been crossed. And finally, enough people have said, like, no more.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of things that are available to us, like on the internet, to compare information, like in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. If you're choosing to believe only what you see in the newspapers and on the mainstream media, and not comparing and contrasting that to what you can find on the internet for free from people actually on the ground, real humans talking to other humans with no agenda, no financial incentive to say anything about a certain group of people, just real human accounts. Like, we've become the news now. Podcasts are the news. YouTube videos are the news. To me, like, the original intention of YouTube was for you to learn how to do things. It's you using the television to teach people other things. That was the original intention. It's supposed to be a how-to. Well, it's become ultimately like almost like a free use university. Like, there's so much great information out there, and there's really great people that are just doing a better job at journalism than people in the media are doing. And I really had lost faith in journalism in 2020 because of the amount of stuff that was being misrepresented and facts hidden, and like the frickin' flip-flopping blows my mind. In case anyone's ever wondering what it's like to be in a narcissistic, abusive relationship, take a look at how the government is treating Canada right now.
Just gonna say that.
Because that's what a narcissistic relationship feels like. How do I know this? Because I was in one for 10 years. And unfortunately, a lot of trauma and abusive family, like trauma-laden abusive family systems as well, they've kind of been taken over by this narcissistic tone because it's learned. Because I think that we've kind of distorted like the patriarchal view of the world. Like, to me, when I think of the patriarchy, like, I know we've made jokes about it to each other and on the podcast, like, the patriarchy, like, it's easy to scapegoat them and make men wrong. But at the same time, I feel like the original intention of the patriarchal rule was like, like that great, strong dad joke, bear hug, I've got your back, I'll show you the way, it might be hard work, but we'll get things done kind of thing. And teaching your children more ethics than you were allowed because you're supposed to teach from experience. But it got so distorted. And then it's like there was this other layer added on, which is when the narcissism came in and the abuse and the trauma came in. And in my experience with my narcissistic relationship, I would bet $1 million that this person was probably emotionally neglected as a child. And part of the pattern of narcissism is that you become so self-sufficient in your own navigating of the world that it actually becomes a very immature perspective. And like some of the stuff that a narcissist does, like, you could literally go on Instagram and Google narcissist, and there's so many infographics out there from really great psychologists that can explain it better than I can. But just the traits that they hold and the patterns and the language that they use, like, we essentially have a man-child running the country. And it's interesting to see the language that's being used by our leaders. They're not words of a leader. They're words of an abusive. They're very inflammatory. It's abusive. It's like being scolded by your dad that you never got along with, and also not having any confidence in what you're saying. It's really interesting how that overlay of narcissism actually is embedded in our systems. So it's embedded in the way the governments run. It's embedded in the systems they've created to quote unquote help the marginalized, or quote unquote help the vulnerable. But I gotta tell you, if you've ever done, there's this like simulation of that you can do like to kind of get yourself into an understanding of living in poverty. And I did it, and it was traumatizing for me. But the essential premise is that you're given a certain amount of money for the day, and you're given tasks that you have to complete throughout the day. And it kind of gives you this physical sense of how many roadblocks somebody living on welfare might encounter in a day. It was a wild experience, and I kind of thought, like, nobody wants to help you, and the system is not designed to help you. And that was my takeaway from that experience. And even the idea of having to justify, like, when I've had to use EI several times throughout my like working life in the last 20 years, and even the idea of having to justify what I'm doing with my time bothered me, because it's like, why are you not addressing the mental health reasons or the mental health things that happen after a person loses a job? Because many people who are laid off go into a deep depression because they don't expect it. Their identity has been taken away from them. Their financials have been taken away from them, because EI doesn't pay that much. I gotta tell you, it doesn't. 55% of your wage, like, and there's a maximum amount you can earn. Like, so that's another layer of the system. And now you throw in healthcare systems and all the roadblocks that you hit in healthcare when you're seeking help. And I almost want to say that even though Canada might have been built on the premise of justice, it was also built on a level of trauma, because look at what we did to the people, the original owners of the land. I can't even say owners isn't the right word, but the original occupants of the land, like the indigenous people that were here before colonization happened, like, and before colonization became Canada. Like, we're not honoring any of the original intention of what this land wanted, and that is another, like, grinds my gears kind of rant. And like what we're doing with the national parks and the provincial parks right now, and how they're being mined for sand and silica and all these different things. And it's like, on one hand, I feel like, did we ask permission? Probably not. But on the other hand, I feel like if Mother Earth didn't want it to happen, she would find a way to stop it. But I'm on the premise of justice, and yet we've have so much injustice. What if the next layer of that is actually uncovering the injustice so that we can clear it and stand tall and strong and say, this is actually how we want humanity to function, and be the leaders of that. And I feel like places like Australia needed that little boost of morale, because I think they were hit really hard. And I mean, we do have a couple of friends that live over there, but they seem to fare okay. But hearing other stories of people that they know and how things have happened, like, I know I've personally had friends take their life in the last year from the lockdowns, and I've lost loved ones to illness and, like, other complications. And yet, like, you almost feel like it's not okay to talk about these things. Like, and I think that what's happening with the Freedom Convoy, it's really like, all the skeletons in the closet, all the dirty laundry is being shown, and it's screaming, look at me. And then we have a leader that's like, you don't exist. You're just a small fringe. You have unacceptable views. Okay, buddy, look in the fucking mirror. Please look in the mirror.
And like, I think that comes down to, that narcissistic kind of relationship stuff again, right? Like, that's the gaslighting. That's the manipulation of, your own truth and stuff like that. And it's very surprising to me to see how many people still like believe that or still listen to that. You know what I mean? Like, I've got people in my life that are hardcore into this, and they're like, no, like, they're these people, these freedom fighters, they're such horrible people. How dare they be these racist and misogynists and blah 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 blah. And it's just like, wow, like, you can't, like, and I don't ever want to judge someone, because you don't know what you don't know. And if you are so, because I feel like some of this is coming from fear, right? Fear and Akashic records of probably trauma. And like, when you come from that space, I don't think you are really looking at things in the full breadth that they could be, right? In the sense of like, I probably see things a little bit differently. And I mean, we trended into the conspiracy theories, and then I pulled myself out of that, and I kind of know where I wanted to stand with things. And don't get me wrong, working in healthcare, I went completely the other way too. And I was like, we need to do this. And, these things need to line up. And, yes, let's all totally wear masks because, thankfully I was on my mat leave. Otherwise, I probably would have lost my job because I would have tore one too many managers a new one about not having masks at the beginning. Um, but like now I'm looking around and I'm like, guys, like, do we not see what's happening here? And like, maybe it's because I've been able to see both sides that I've kind of come back to the center and been able to be more of an observer. But yeah, like just listening to some of these people talk, I'm just like, oh my God. Like, I am very concerned with what is going to happen when the truth does come out there and things kind of shift. I mean, we're already talking about, stopping, removing the mandates and stopping the vax passes and things like that, which, I mean, hallelujah, that's going to be awesome because we have marginalized a lot of people. And I don't care who you think you are. This has affected all races, all creeds, all people,
all ages.
And I really do think that like not having this separation of society in any form is a good thing, right? I know in my life there have been people who have been affected, families that have been torn apart, friendships that have broken down, and like I'm talking like people who have been together for so long, right? Like families especially, right? That have crumbled because of what's been said and what's been done and people's choices and their right to choose.
And the polarization of it all.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that you have to get the vaccine. You got to not take the vaccine. That's not what that's a here or there type of situation. It's
not about this anymore.
Yeah, it's your choice. What we really need to focus on is why are we so violently opposed to people who do not choose to get a vaccine or not choose to go through with a medical procedure? Because again, related back to healthcare, when I'm working and say an individual comes up to me and they're supposed to get a certain medication at bedtime and they choose that they don't want it, I'm not the person who's then going to force this person to take it. I do my due diligence by informing them of their informed consent, and educating them about the various medication that they are choosing not to take at that point. It is still their right to choose. In nursing, we talk about the 7 rights. And I mean, most of them are like the right time and the right person and, fluff like that. But it's still the right reason and the right to choose. Right? And that is something that I've seen shift out of healthcare. I am no longer seeing this informed consent and let's educate people in a actual logistics type of way, talking about these are the side effects, these are the benefits. Let's see what fits best for you. Okay. Oh, maybe this one's better for you. Whereas what we've seen, especially in Manitoba, is you call up the hotline where you sign on to whatever vaccine portal it was or whatever it was, and you book an appointment, and then whatever you go, like whatever date you went on or whatever site you went to, that dictated what vaccine you got. Yeah. Right? And so there was no real informed consent. Anyone that did say things that were side effects or negative ill effects of the vaccine were quickly shuffled out of the way. You did not talk about it. We minimized a lot of these effects.
That's gaslighting.
Yeah, like it was horrible. Like I know people that like there was one person that I spoke to who she got her first dose. And I mean, I'll preface this by saying she has an autoimmune disease that her doctor was like, you should not take this. But because of various mandates and because of certain situations in her life, In order for her to visit her child in another province, she needed to
Yeah.
be vaccinated. So she's like, no, 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 I'm choosing to get this. She took her first dose, her heart stopped.
Oh my God.
Her doctor was like, you should not get the second dose. She's like, sorry, I'm still wanting to visit my son.
Yeah, and that puts you between a rock and a hard place. And the fact that the medical industry, I would almost bet, and also $1 million on this, that they've been gagged as well.
They
As
have.
well as, right, the
I've received those
lawyers.
emails.
Well, there you go. So now we now have doctors in this dance of, as well, of the Hippocratic Oath and what the government is telling me. Well, I don't think either of those people get to play God with a human body. And whether you believe in God or not, or whatever it is that you believe in, I really do think that humans deserve the benefit of the doubt. But I also see so much blind faith being put into these systems. And I think that might be another layer of why it is so challenging for society to accept what's going on, because I grew up in a generation where you just took it on honor system, and medical system wasn't as coercive in the 80s, and I even remember as a small child having my doctors asking me questions when it comes to like how I was feeling and whatnot. And like I had a lot of I had a recurring issue with, I guess, tonsillitis. And then when I was like around 9 years old, I had the tonsils removed. But like I remember having interesting conversations with my medical team, with my parents around, obviously, and I really felt like I was able to have a say, even as a child, about what was happening in my body. And I don't remember having any traumatic issues regarding like the vaccine schedule that I had as a kid. But at the same time now, it's like, I don't even want to set foot in a medical setting at all, unless I'm dying, because I like, for allopathic medicine, for me, yeah, if I have a broken bone or I need stitches, but even if I need stitches, I don't have to go to emergency. There's other places I could go for that. Or if I need something like, that requires emergency care, that makes sense. But full disclosure, I've had fibroid issues for 2 years. They've almost 3 years, actually. They've been incredibly painful. I've healed them with energy work, because what the medical doctors were offering to me fucked me up worse than helping me. All they do to mitigate fibroids in the medical setting is they offer you birth control, which doesn't reduce or remove the fibroid. It just controls the bleeding, but it really doesn't even control the bleeding. It only controls your menstrual cycle. So that doesn't actually help me when I have something that's causing internal discomfort and pain and blood loss, right? Like, graphic, but that's the truth of it. 3 sessions with energy healers and working through my own Akashic records and all of the reasons why this fibroid manifested in the first place, all of the emotions, all of the relationships, all of the cords and the contracts that were being stored in that area. Once I dismantled them all, guess what? Fibroid's gone. I've got no pain. I don't even have period cramps anymore. For 4 months now, I haven't had any period cramps. Allopathic medicine didn't fucking do that. The birth control that they gave me made me a miserable bitch. I don't need help with that. Like, I can do that well enough on my own, and I don't even like being that. I honestly morphed into a different person taking those pills. And what the doctor also said to me, which was really infuriating, and oh my gosh, so she offered me birth control, and then she offered me this other medication that clots your blood. And I went to take this prescription to the pharmacy, and the pharmacist looked at me and she said, "Why are you being given both of these medications? Because they actually are contraindicated." And I said to her, "This is what the doctor told me. The doctor said to take your birth control, and it was a 21-day cycle, and then you're off for 7 days. She said, in that 7 days when you are shedding, if it's too much, use this other medication to stop the bleeding." The freaking pharmacist, love her. She rolled her eyes. She's like, I'm glad you've told me that you're not going to take them at the same time, because the contraindications are that you could cause yourself a stroke.
You can get blood clots from hormonal birth control.
Right. Especially if you're a smoker, which I didn't know when I was in my 20s when I was actually taking birth control.
Yikes.
So anyone that knew me in my 20s with my mood swings, I apologize, because they were not me. That was 100% the pills that I was on. Anyway, all my poor coworkers at 7 o'clock in the morning when I worked at the hotel. I was not a nice person until 11 a.m. I'm still not a nice person until 11 a.m. I prefer my mornings to myself. That's not true. I can be nice, but I just don't like interaction with other people. Maybe small children is fine, but humans, don't ask me anything. Anyways, that's just my, like, whatever. And like, allopathic medicine has its place, but maybe I'm coming from the lensing of those negative experiences, that having that awareness of how angry I was being on these birth control pills really made me appreciate more who I am not on them, and why I would never, ever agree to having something like that in my system ever again. And I can honestly say she technically coerced me, because I said no to her so many times. I don't want to go on birth control. I know what it makes me feel like. I don't like who I am when I'm on it. And she's just following protocol. But when I go to see a naturopathic doctor, they teach you how to eat food to regulate your hormones instead of taking a pill to regulate your hormones. Mm-hmm. And there's not as many negative side effects from consuming these foods that can help you. But we're leaving a lot on the table with allopathic medicine because, in my opinion, because it's one train of thought, it's one way of thinking, and it's not including your nutrition, it's not including your mental health, and it's not including what your soul needs and what your soul wants, and it's not including your soul records. Like, I've been on this planet for 40 years. I've had enough metaphysical experiences to say without a shadow of a doubt that I believe in energy healing way faster than I will with anything else in regards to chronic disease and minor ailments. Like, obviously, if you cut your finger, I can't energy heal your finger shut. Like, I might be able to use Reiki on it, but if you need stitches, please go get stitches. That's not what I'm saying. I do have a fair amount of negative experiences with allopathic medicine, but I also have some that were positive, and I understand where it's coming from. But the tone that it has taken in the last couple of years with the coercion, like, if I was coerced into taking birth control in 2019, 2020, this was before like the whole pandemic mandate stuff happened. Like, I feel like how expensive, or not expensive, like how it was almost exhausting actually to have that conversation with her. It's almost amplified even more now with the government putting their nose in how public health should be handled, And it's like, why are we silencing the voices of our clients? Why are we silencing the voices of our patients? That's my big question. And why has it become normalized to share medical information or assume that your medical information should be asked? Or like, I'm sharing my medical information on this podcast because I'm choosing to do so. The listeners, whatever, like, do what you want with that information. Like, I'm just sharing an experience and my lensing of things. I'm not saying that you should stop taking your birth control or use these other medications or whatever. Like, and I'm not saying that there might not be medical reasons that could help fibroids, but I didn't want to go with the options for having like invasive things happening within my uterus. Like, that's a no for me. That was a no for my body. I'm choosing to follow my inner intuition and my knowing on how to heal myself. They can go hand in hand, absolutely. I do think there is some value in that, and I don't know that we'll see it in our lifetime, but that would be really cool if it did happen in our lifetime. But why did that change, I guess, is my question, because I feel like in the last 15 years, things have gotten amplified on the negative side of things. Like, it almost feels like all of the systemic stuff that's happening has really gotten a lot worse, and like the medical situation and the overreaching of the way education is, the direction in which education is going in some places in Canada and even in the States too. Like, some of the curriculum that is coming out, I don't necessarily agree with the tone or the intention of it. And again, we're still leaving mental health off the table for a lot of these things. Mm-hmm. Like, too many of these things.
Yeah. I don't know. It's really interesting to note about kind of how all of the systems work together. Especially working in mental health, I see how mental health obviously has a direct tie into addictions, and addictions tie into mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been in situations where, we take someone because we know that they're not going to get help elsewhere.
Anywhere else, yeah.
But we also are like, in my unit especially, we are not equipped to dealing with, the intense struggles that someone goes through with addictions. Like we are fine with the crisis stuff. We're fine with mental health, but when it comes to addictions, we don't have doctors on staff to
Yeah. Deal with the
prescribe,
visibility.
medications to help ease, withdrawal, or
Yeah.
to help with opiate agonist treatment and therapies and stuff like that. And it's coming. I know, what was it, 2018, 2019, there was that big, I want to call it the Virgo report. I can't quite remember.
Interesting name.
Yeah, there was this big inquiry or report that came out that dictated how things needed to move and shift and change and things like that. And then the federal government actually gave Manitoba, I can't remember how much money, but a large sum of money to boost up our mental health and our addictions. But like everything, it takes so goddamn fucking long to do anything. And I'm sure by the time that we actually see changes, most of that money has probably been spent on the bureaucratic bullshit
Mm-hmm.
that usually gets, eaten up, right? Like, oh, we got to do the studies and we've got to, do all the reports that we need to do. And oh, let's hire some more admin staff to go through all this information. And we need
Let's hire
panels of people.
let's hire consultants.
Yeah.
There was a little video, one of the many thousand clips that I was been watching between all the Tucker Carlson and Real News, Rebel News Media, and all these other different like alternate media sources. A lot of it's very comical, and it might have even been a Russell Brand rant. I don't know. Again, I love that man. He's very entertaining to me. Talking about how like the next best job is to, like the consultants. The realm of consulting for the government has become like one of the most popular jobs, and I was just kind of laughing about like, yeah, let's hire people to do a survey instead of just throwing that money at the actual problem.
Right?
Like, let's hire people to decide what are the best streetlights for Winnipeg instead of just fucking replacing the streetlights with something and seeing what works. Although the ones that they gave us in the last couple of years were freaking strobe lights and didn't do anything for us, but whatever. And there was a survey sent out about that too, of like, if you have problems with your streetlights, please answer this questionnaire. Like, okay, yeah. Wow.
Well, and it's just really that I'm really glad, because I know we're running a little bit long, and I want to like, wrap it up soon, but I find it so funny that we are so focused on trying to fix problems by hiring more consultants and not actually listening to people. Like, let's listen to the people who have lived experience.
Yeah.
Let's listen to the people who are making those complaints. Because, especially, don't even get me started, healthcare has become the new customer service industry.
Oh, that feels gross.
I know. We have been lovingly called a hotel many, many times, where people just come and book their room and stay for 7 days. You can tell how excited I am about that. We take courses on customer service.
That's gross.
That is gross. We're fucking healthcare. I'm not here to serve you tea and wine and crackers. No.
Like, I understand bedside manner, but I feel like those people that are drawn into healthcare should have some level of that, but I almost feel like it gets killed out of a lot of you. I feel like
don't call me Nurse Ratched for any particular reason. I love the people I work with, but sometimes there's just certain populations that come through that I'm like, oh, that's one of, and that's where my triggers come up, and I know that I really need to adjust myself, and but it's the people that it's the people that really trigger you the most, that when you actually create the shift for them, you get the most, I don't know,
It's like you almost
response
get
from.
more out of it than they do because you're
Yeah, like
able to do the shift.
I know there's people out there that like I will pour in 110% of myself and they will give me 0.00001% of themselves. And when I'm doing more work than you, that's when I go, cool. Do you actually want to get better or do you just want to stay here as like a hotel for 7 days? Because if you don't want to get better, then I'm not pouring myself into you. I'm going to give you as much as you're giving me. Which,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and like maybe not the best thing to hear from someone that you're working with in a healthcare setting, but it's true because it's that choice again. If they're choosing not to help themselves, I'm not choosing to force it upon you.
That's kind of where I was going to go with that. Like we as healers at any realm, and I even as a teacher, I actually think in any profession this applies. Do you want the help or do you just want a sounding board? Do you just need to vent?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the biggest lessons of 2021 that for my takeaway is that you can't help somebody that doesn't want to be helped. And I knew this. I know this, especially with friends and family that have struggled with addictions, like in the past when I was younger, like, and having that awareness and seeing the family of friends and the friends confiding in me and saying like, they're struggling with this and they want to always save this other person. It's like, okay, but are you actually their savior? Because especially with addictions, mm-hmm. they have to want it. If they don't want it, then all you can do is be a safe space for them. And that is it. And if you can't also be the safe space for them, then we have to realize that, wait a second, is my choice or my actions or my words, are they causing this person harm or is it causing them healing? Because we sometimes forget about the fact that we might be causing them more harm with our expectations and our wants and our desires for them. But you can't help someone that doesn't want to be helped. You can't teach somebody that doesn't want to be taught. You can't teach someone in survival mode. You need to offer them a safe space to get their body regulated out of that survival mode first before that child is ready to listen to you. You have to learn to love your students first. And I feel like on some level that can apply to your healing realm as well. Like obviously not a recommendation to do trauma bonding, but like like we don't want to go there. And like there's an interesting line of like how much personal information you want to share and yada yada. But like I'm kind of an open book. Like I don't really feel like there's anything in my life that I'm not willing to talk about candidly, because that is an experience that I've chosen to help others heal with. So whatever. And like I like kudos to one of my favorite podcasts. Like the speaker says often, he's like, I'm transparent because I'm not going to have someone come after me and try and slander me, so that's that level of transparency there is needed and required to build trust with your community, whether that's the podcast listeners that we have, whether that's the healers, whether that's the people that we work with teaching, whatever, your family, your friends, all of that. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when I think about my experience with that doctor in 2019, 2020, trying to sort out my fibroid issue, like I think I can honestly pinpoint like the narrative that they're taught. And she was a lovely doctor. She made me feel like she's like really mothering and lovely and sweet and like obviously educated, but you could, there was just this point when you could tell when you were having this conversation where it switched from the doctor seeing you as a human to the doctor shifting into the narrative of what they have to say to you, because they're given a certain protocol of how to, give you a medication and fix it and try and paint it in a positive light. It's like, but I'm literally sitting here telling you that it makes me a miserable, raging bee, and you're still telling me that I should take it? Like, there's no consideration for the aftermath that occurred with my poor family that had to deal with me for a month of me being a raging, angry bitch. Like, that wasn't fair to my family for me to be easily triggered that way. And then there's no information on how to come down and re-regulate your hormones after you've been on a hormone altering drug. Like I still have no idea. And I still have to obviously figure out how to regulate. I mean, it's better, but
I'll teach you. I did it for many, well, okay, not that many, but like when I was on hormonal birth control for 10 years and I came off of it, my cycle was so messed up. It's still messed up. And I already, like, I've had a kid, like,
Yeah.
been probably almost 7 years of being off of it, and I still have. And I've tried lots of things. But I
That's,
have lots of knowledge on it because I pour my heart and soul into things that I need to learn.
that's amazing. I mean, I do too, but I don't always apply, but that's fine. I'm getting better at that. Yeah, I don't know. I think it bothers me that doctors have become salesmen. And that's the expectation of the industry. It's not because that's what they signed up for. But and like collectively speaking, to round it back to the beginning with the Freedom Convoy and all of that, like what's happening collectively, like we joke your akashics are showing. So what we're seeing is all of those timelines of governance where humans have been under governance that maybe hasn't always had the human individual humans' best interests. And then on the other side of that, the awareness that I just had earlier this week was all of the timelines in which humans have actually called in governance and agreed to being governed. And then now we're realizing, oh shit, maybe this doesn't work. Or that those timelines of governance and being governed have been distorted and hijacked by more nefarious intentions. And I mean, those of you that have the awareness, you can tap in and see whether or not you have some triggers there that need help clearing. But for the most part, I think the collective records are being collapsed or have been collapsed. And that's why we're kind of seeing in real time in Canada that crumbling happening. And I certainly didn't expect it to happen in Canada either. Like I still, like, it's kind of laughable to me that I was like waiting for, I'm just assuming America would do it, but like, why does America get all the glory? Like Canadians deserve some glory too. Glorious and free, right? Like that's part of our national anthem.
We could do an entire like thought on that because
Picking apart the national anthem.
there's some really interesting keys in there now. Like True North, strong and free.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a that's a lot of
There's like actually
coming out of that.
What you think about it, it actually it's very heavily loaded. Like I actually wonder if it has been enchanted, so to speak, or embedded with some what's the word, grids? I don't know.
I feel like because I don't feel like the guy who wrote it was, particularly magical. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I can only imagine of what happens when millions upon millions upon millions of people sing a song over and over and over again, believing those words, right?
Yeah, adding their energy to it.
Adding their energy and fueling it. It becomes something of its own, right?
It does become its own entity. And did you know that we found this out in our teaching realm, that there is a law that states that the schools have to play the national anthem. And if they do not, that it affects their funding.
I don't feel like my high school played the national anthem.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool too, but I was like, so now I want to, and like, I remember when I was a kid, we still sang God Save the Queen at the end of the day. And I was in elementary school when it was abolished from the school system, because we stopped playing it in the 80s. So you probably didn't have that experience when you were a kid.
No, I grew up in a farm school. So I until grade 4, we still had a map with the USSR on it. And
That's
the
amazing.
USSR collapsed in what, 91?
Yeah.
So I was, okay, so how old are you in grade 4? You're
9-ish.
9?
9, 10, yeah. Your face.
That was 2000. 9 years after the collapse of the USSR, we were still taught about the USSR.
Well, we were too, but we were taught in terms of, mind you, I would have been older by that point, but we were taught in terms of how the borders changed. Like I have old atlases that I'm hanging on to because they're entertaining to look at. There's countries on those atlases that don't even exist anymore.
We were certainly not taught about changes in the borders. We got to grade 5 and they were like, so the world has changed. And we're like, What do
What
you
is happening?
have? How many different countries to learn now? It was great.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and like the God Save the Queen thing, just to finish my thought there, I'm pretty sure we sang that after the national anthem every morning until I don't know if it was like grade 5 or 6 or if we sang it all through elementary school. It was weird. And then when I found people who didn't say that, I was just like, what do you mean you don't sing God Save the Queen? Like that's we're Canadians, we do that. We are under the British rule and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, I
okay.
don't know what's shifted, but I remember like we had the national anthem, we had a morning prayer as
Oh
like
yeah, we didn't have
over
that at all.
over the intercom, and then we had God Save the Queen at 3:30. And I remember like as a small child in the grade 2-3 doors at my school, which are at the back of the school, which why the hell do the smallest children have to walk the farthest to their classrooms? Like they put the small kids at the back of the school. I don't understand this, but anyway. So yeah, we would be standing and getting ready for school at the end of the day, and they would play God Save the Queen, and then the bell would ring. We weren't allowed to leave before the bell rang, right? So we were forced to listen to this song, and nobody sang along to it. In the morning, at least, most of us sang along to the anthem. But in the afternoon, we were so done with the day that nobody gave a shit about the poor song. Like they were just wanting to go home. Like I used to lean on the door and try and push it open and then get yelled at.
So
Yeah. But like this is again like I don't know, to bring it back around also just to like that blind faith and all of these systems operating on this blind faith, but yet look at how many mishaps and missteps we've had, and all of that's getting uncovered right now.
mm-hmm.
And honestly, as scary as it might seem and as uncertain as it might seem, I am holding out my own blind, not so blind faith. It's not actually blind. I really truly believe in truth prevailing and justice reigning. Maybe that's the Libra in me too, but I'm fucking here for it. And every time I tap into what's happening, like I can't comprehend it going sour because the world is watching. Canada may not be watching what's happening in Canada, but the world is watching, and then maybe America will come in and save us. I don't know. Probably not. I think we're going to do it ourselves.
They're not stealing our thunder.
No, I know. We can't let that happen. America needs to get their own thunder. That's totally fair. But just, yeah, like that blind faith, it has to go. We need to start using discernment, and we need to start asking more questions. And if that means we have to get louder, I can teach people how to raise their voices in ways like, thank God for my hospitality experience. Like you have customer service training for your nursing job, which I think is ridiculous, but entertaining at the same time. My hospitality background really allowed me to flourish as a teacher, and even more so now in the last couple of years as a healer, and just being able to get my thoughts out into the world and being better spoken about it and not so like angry bitch about it, like, but wording it in an eloquent way. We have to start using our voice, and we have to start, using our voice in the face of adversity and not being afraid to challenge authority, especially when authority is overstepping.
Guys,
and I can't wait to see it.
When you can't question the powers that be, I'm going to wait for you to swallow. You are in a fucking cult.
When you're not allowed to leave where you live?
Yeah, you're in a cult.
Boy.
Really projecting in that one, but
I'm glad you waited for me to swallow my water. So
it's like, hold on, wait.
Yeah, that was definitely, didn't see that one coming, but yet here we are, and it really, I'm holding out hope for Canadians. I'm really rooting for freedom, and I'm just loving what I'm seeing. There are so many Instagram accounts that are available that are showing real live raw footage from decent human beings that are on the ground of all makes, models, and colors, that are available. There's families, there's different cultures, there's drumming, there's singing, there's dance parties.
A bouncy castle.
Oh my goodness.
They played street hockey.
Yeah, like totally Canadian on all layers and all levels. We have moms groups baking and food donations and all these things, and yet the mainstream is still continuing to vilify. That is narcissistic abuse. And I cannot wait to see the accountability, because I can feel it coming. Like you know, in Harry Potter when the Dementors descend upon the train and it's just like they all kind of like whoosh, and they're, you know, imagine that, but like not dark gray and scary, but like bright light and clarity coming to whisk away the nonsense. Like it's almost like the reverse order, you know, like reverse engineering things. I think that enough people are waking up to the lies that we've bought and sold as truth for so long. And it's shitty to see the amount of people whose realities are getting shattered, but we're here for you because we've been down these rabbit holes already. And we've known it for longer, not because I'm not saying this to be like, haha, like I told you so. Like, no, we had this awareness sooner so that we could process the stuff in advance of the next round of people that are awakening so that we can now help you navigate the chaos, because I am not the same person today as I was a month ago. I've done a lot of clearing in this last month alone. A lot of collective stuff is coming up, and every single thing I've been tracking in my own Akashics this past week and a half has had a collective common thread with it. So it's like, oh, that's why it's coming up, because it isn't just me. I'm doing this for the greater. Mm-hmm. And that's really why we're here as light workers, starseeds, healers, witches, whatever, all of that. Even you can't tell me there isn't like light workers within our politicians too, like Candace Bergen. Holy shit, that woman is fire, and she's Manitoban. And we need more. We need more examples of strong women like that are well-spoken and eloquent and can hold their ground and stay on access and actually ask questions that need to be asked. The Canadians have been too scared to ask for the last 2 years because we've been silenced.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I cannot wait. Like, let freedom reign. I fully believe in that. It's not going to be easy. It never is. It never has been. But only in Canada can we have an approach to something that feels like war turn into a peaceful rally that's actually like, it is a spiritual war. I really do see it as a spiritual war right now. It is a battle between good and evil thought forms, not actual specific like physical things. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, there isn't an actual war that's happening. Like that's not, I don't see that trajectory at all in Canada. But the last stage of war is believing we're still in a war, and that goes in with my comment about the truth following through 3 stages. We're in that violently opposed stage still, but it's I really feel like in the last couple of days that has accelerated so much that by the beginning of next week, when this podcast is actually released to our listeners, that we are going to we're going to see more of that narrative crumbling and more of the truth prevailing. And I'm really grateful for the amount of coverage that is getting out there in the world from other news stations and alternate media. Like, I don't care if you love or hate Fox News, it's funny as hell to listen to. If nothing else, it's funny as hell to listen to. And there's so many other people, like, even when your own members of parliament are starting to question the narrative and the constant language that's on repeat that doesn't actually deviate or answer a question, like you're literally giving out word salad responses, like again, that's narcissism. Like, mm-hmm. You know, there's no way that we can't win this. It's just a matter of how messy does it really need to be. And I don't think it's going to be physically messy. I think the only thing that is going to be shattered is people's paradigms and people's belief systems.
Yep.
And that's okay, because we've already been there, done that. We know what it's like, you know, that kind of the joke of like, oh, your first time. Well, that's okay. We're here for it. You know, like it's entertaining, but it's also, it's like, we're doing this Canadian collective dark night of the soul. Right. And it's so, it's like, it's just an interesting buzz energy of empowerment that I feel really like lit up, I guess, at a soul level. And I didn't have that experience a week ago. And that's just from the collective clearings that I've been doing.
Yeah. So. Like, and I can't tell you how many times, like, I mean, you know, every time I see something about the Freedom Convoy, I'm like in tears.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so cute.
Like sobbing. I was working the week that they were driving through and watching, because if I'm going to get behind something or if I'm going to be opposed to something, I want to learn about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Same.
Because I need to know the information for me to have it accurate. Right. Mm-hmm. So for me, watching some of the live streams of the crowds and the trucks coming through and learning about what this whole thing was, because it like really flew together really quickly. I was in full on tears, like sobbing in the lunchroom. Thankfully, I'm alone because we have such a small staff, but I'm like, and I'd like have to compose myself, big red rings around my eyes. Cause when I cry, my eyes get all like red,
Coffee.
and I'm just like, okay, how do we need to put some ice down, get rid of the red rings. And I'm like, okay, we need to go back upstairs and hold it together. But like, it was making me really emotional. And I think it's just because for the first time, I am seeing people stand up. Sorry, I should say for the first time in 2 years, I'm saying people or seeing people stand up saying enough is enough. We've had it. You've hit
Yeah.
like you've pushed us too far.
Yeah.
We need to do something differently.
Yeah.
And whether you agree with the vaccine mandates or not isn't the point of this.
That's right. There's more to that than that.
One of the things that I noticed, or at least from a healthcare perspective, I think, okay, if we set a precedence by saying the government can push something onto everyone, like if we go through and we're like, you know what? No, vaccine mandates for everyone. Everyone has to be vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
That sets a precedent of saying that the government can tell you what you need to do with your body.
Yep.
That
And
takes
then
away
what
your
else?
body autonomy.
Yep.
And if they do it once, they're going to do it again. And when we're compliant on a very small thing, this is how it all started. Oh my God, this is going to be another whole episode.
That's okay.
But like, I'll say this one thing and then we'll end.
Lies.
When it starts with is a small compliance, right? We're just going to shut down for 2 weeks. Things will go back to normal.
Yep.
2 weeks ends. Okay, no. We need to be locked down for another 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we're adding the masks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, now everyone, we need to shut down everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Sorry, only the stores are open. Or whatever. Like, I'm not really going along the timeline, but like we've said yes to small things that have grown over time to now we're getting to the point where like, yeah, sure. Give me 2 shots. Now give me a booster. 6 months later, are we going to need another booster? Now, if that vaccine wanes really quickly, like we're seeing evidence of it in, different research out there.
Mm-hmm.
So are they going to come back and say, no, every 3 months you need a booster, then every month? Like where do we draw the line? Right? So compliance is something that happens over time and it starts slow. It's like when you're in an abusive relationship, right?
Yeah, 100%. It creeps up on you.
Yeah, you don't just get beat up one day and you're like, oh, wow, what the hell? I guess I'll stay. No.
It was 5 years before I realized I was in an abusive situation. Yep. 5 years out of 10.
Slow. And they love bomb you first.
Yep.
And I don't want to analyze the whole government and like run through this whole thing, but being as someone who has training in psychiatry and psychology, I can see the patterns of this and it scares the bejesus out of me because I'm like, anyways. So watching these people, this freedom convoy, these truckers and everyday citizens taking a stance and standing up for what they believe in and saying no more is so empowering. And whether you agree with it or not, try to step out and be an observer for a moment and watch these people like protest. Like it's so
we need to bring back humanization. Mm-hmm. Because we have spent the last 2 years dehumanizing. I personally went to the convoy as it passed through Winnipeg, and I watched the thousands of trucks that the media at that point was labeling small fringe minority. Remember that? I saw the amount of people on the sides of the roads. And then a couple of days later, starting to find these Instagram accounts of different people that are involved, and stating wow, Manitoba was actually one of the biggest crowds. They were really surprised by the warm welcome because Headingley was jam-packed on both sides of the roads for so long, and they were all along the perimeter highway on the south with the pattern that they took as well. And even against like the Deacon's Corner area was also very heavily populated with people in support of these convoys. And also watching these trucks come by were really cool, actually. Like legitimately, I did not see one single nefarious flag at all. It was all Canadian flags, and then the infamous "fuck Trudeau" flag. Like whatever, okay, if that's
just so great.
You know what? And it's like we as humans have forgotten what it's like to literally look at another human's face because we've been masked for 2 fucking years, and realize that there is a soul and a heartbeat behind that facade. And we have spent so much time believing in things that are taught to us, that were embedded in our fields at a rapid pace on the TV, on the radio, with our neighbors, with our employers, yada, yada, that we have forgotten that we are talking about human lives here.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't about mandates. This is about maintaining humanity. And for people in power to think that they have the right to take away the individual, that in itself is literally like, that's another Akashic collective record of genocide in a way. Like there is a parallel comparison here. And if people want to come at me for making that comparison, I'm sorry, you need to pull your heads out of your bums and go back to that observer state. Because if you're not willing to look at the parallels in history, then you are doomed to repeat it. Mm-hmm. And Canada is already saying no more. So we're very close to getting into that stage 3 of the truth, where it is wildly accepted as evident, self-evident.
I'll also just say that Moderna, the CEO of Moderna, just dropped a whole bunch of stocks.
There was another, yes, I saw that as well. Moderna and Pfizer and one of the other co-founders of Moderna also dropped $1 billion of his stocks. Like, mm-hmm. We have to look at the big picture. We can't just look at the compartmentalization that has happened, because that's part of that isolation, right? Keep everyone quarantined, keep you separate from your neighbors, don't talk, and family, you know, pit your neighbors against each other, pit your family against each other. There's members of my family that I will never speak to ever again. Not unless they step forward in some form of reconciliation, and it has to come from them, because my line is drawn and I'm not allowing someone else to think that they can walk and tread over me. Bloodline, to me, like blood is not thicker than water. It's how you treat me. I have friendships who I have not met in person that love me more deeply than members of my family. They have been more supportive of me in this situation. And I cannot wait to have the ability to hop the pond and wrap my arms around these friends and say, like, it's finally time that we get to hang out. People that I've met on the internet in the last 2 years, mm-hmm. the friendship between you and I that has blossomed in the last 2 years, going through this, like, of course we figured we would pick a shit show to you know, to be in command with for life, like, because I feel like we've done that a few times.
Probably.
Maybe. You know, but like where I was 2 years ago, now I can confidently say, like, I am stronger in my convictions on what's happening. And I'm also better spoken about it as well. And my spinning out on these things as not happening as often. And I'm getting way better at saying, am I tapping into my own energy, or is this collective? Is this even mine? Can I send it back? Can I pull myself out of this? Can I pull myself back from the emotions? What is really going on here? What is the observation mode? How do I approach this person as a human? And I'm really trying not to dehumanize my own family members, but it isn't just what happened during the pandemic that caused it. It's literally, again, like the macro to the micro, what's happened in the collective of the skeletons of the closet being uprooted. This, I feel like, for family systems and friendships is really, if your family has crumbled because of this, it was never stable in the first place. It was a false reality. So we're seeing this collective shift of mindsets and like a split for a little while, but I do think we're going to come back together. I just think that it's going to take some time. And I think that we need to really focus on how we can now heal collectively as well, which I think is going to unfold for us in the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. But we have to stop with the blind faith, and we have to move forward with discernment and humanity. Like that's really that's what we need to see, restoring humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. anyways, with that, we should probably wrap up.
Yes. I mean, it was due. We haven't chatted in a long time, and I feel like I could talk for another 2 hours. So,
Yeah, that was much longer than I was expecting, but I think, you know what, there was a lot to talk about. We had like, what, 3-4 weeks of like no episodes, so it's kind of been
and the whole world shifting completely into something, some
the
new
whole
paradigm.
world shifted its, well, I won't say it's paradigms, but like things have happened. I mean, I kind of almost feel like sometimes we need to be like little announcers. We're like, you know, at a sports game where we're like, oh, and the Freedom Convoy is now taking over Canada.
Yeah.
And it's
I feel like it needs hype
inspired.
girls.
Yeah.
Hype girls.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
it's so
yeah,
interesting.
all of those labels and words and things that the mainstream media and the government will have you believing to hate your neighbor, please know that those are lies. Please trust your instinct, because no matter where you are on the spectrum, I can guarantee you feel like that, you know, inherently something is off, and that's because it is. And we love you anyway, wherever you're at on this spectrum, because the only way out of this is through it, and the only way through it is with love. And we really are seeing that with the Freedom Convoy, because I do think that the original inherent global intention was peace and freedom and love at that core root. And I guess Canada really is proving themselves to be, we might be the nice person, but we're not a pushover.
No. And I think that's like, it's like one of the best things to see coming out of this, you know, and we're already starting to see shifts coming from this Freedom Convoy, whether they were already talking about them or not prior. But I think it has some effects, which we can talk about in the next episode.
Absolutely. I'm excited for that one too. I feel like
yeah, and I think that'll be a good one. Anyways, yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. If you want to find us, you can find us at Enter the Vortex Podcast on Instagram and on Facebook, and you can find YouTube. Us on all of your streaming platforms for podcasts and YouTube. Where can you find Carol?
Reminder, I've changed my platform, so you can find me at Coach Carol Sky, and I will be available in Winnipeg at a new gym that's opening up very soon. So you can stay tuned for that, more information there. I'm super pumped about that. I will chat more about that in the next couple of episodes. But yeah, Coach Carol Sky on Instagram, on Facebook, and yeah, that's it. Love y'all. Mm-hmm. And you, Erin, I think you have to mention yours again.
Find me at Heal with Erin Mindi. However, that might change in the near future as well. So great shifts and changes are coming.
I feel that.
Yeah, it'll be really exciting. So anyways, thank you all for tuning in for this long-awaited episode. Mm-hmm. We appreciate all of you being so patient to, wait for us to come back. And we won't see you guys, but we'll
be back very
soon. Us in the next episode.
Absolutely. Which is not going to be a month from now. It'll be like a week from now.
Yes.
Promise. All right.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.